All right, everyone, we're going to get started. Everyone, I'd like to call the RTM budget hearing for Thursday, April 10th, 2025 to order. Will the clerk take the roll?
Ken Estorita, Peter Britton, Melissa Longo, Brooks Baracino, Tara Cook-Littman.
Here.
Megan McCloat, Dave Rock, Chris Shea, Bob Elwanger, Mike Hardigan, Jeff Steele, Cindy Waldron, Laura Carson, she's online, Michelle McCabe, Marcy Spallier, here. Liz Esma, here. Josh Garskoff, Kristen O'Neill, Sharon Pastilli, Jay Wolk, Rob Blanchard, Nancy Donnie, Eric Juniak,
Here.
Alex Ocampo, Steve Barretts, Lori Galdenzi, John Kuhn, Scott Nick,
Here.
Lenny Brayman,
Here.
Chris Carroll, Colin Colburn, Christine Ludwizak, Drew Georgiadis, Lisa Havey, Mark McDermott, Karen Wackerman, Matt Ambrose, Justin Contrado, Margaret Horton, Pierre Ratsky.
Here.
Thank you. Let's all stand for the pledge. Thank you. One last reminder today that, again, have a busy hearing schedule, and out of respect for all of our department heads and presenters, we're going to ask each member to just ask 2 questions for the first time and let it stand with questions. There'll be plenty of opportunities for comments at our budget vote. And please refrain from asking questions that have already been asked. Thank you. We're going to start with page 73. The Kennedy Collective, Marlene Bodnar, Chief of Staff, is online. Unfortunately, we had the wrong person mentioned on Monday, so we're glad we've got the opportunity for Marlene to be here now. When she's unmuted, if you just want to give me a little presentation, there you go, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I had asked if I could share my screen, but it's saying I can't. I'll send the request.
You should be good to share it now, I believe.
Yep, now I can. Thank you. All right. First of all, thank you to the town of Fairfield and the residents for the steadfast support of the Kennedy Collective, formerly the Kennedy Center, for more than 21 years, for inviting us to the Kennedy Collective to share with the representatives more about the Kennedy Collective tonight, and rescheduling for us, and for considering our grant request to support individuals with disabilities. Just a little bit about us. Evelyn Kennedy founded the Kennedy Center and Collective 75 years ago in 1951, 74 years ago in 1951. On April 11th, 2026, we will be here 75 years. The organization continues to be guided by the founders' 2 core beliefs: every person deserves to be recognized, and every person deserves to feel equal to others. Today, the Kennedy Collective continues to create pathways for people to flourish and thrive through our support services and social enterprises. In terms of the town of Fairfield and the Kennedy Collective, Inc., the Kennedy Collective provided 49 services to residents from the town of Fairfield in 2024. These services included participation in the following programs: the Autism Learning Network, Behavioral Support Services, day programs, employment services, transition to employment, residential services, transition services, travel training, mobility services, recreational activities, and social enterprises. Additionally, in 2024, we employed 14 residents from the town of Fairfield. So the Kennedy Collective has had put in a grant request And to let you know, these funds would support our operational expenses and allow us to continue to expand our most impactful initiatives. Some of these initiatives include our newer center-based collective ABA program. This is serving people, children, teens, and young adults ages 3 to 21 with autism. We have many programs. I'm just highlighting a few. The MDAC, Maggie Daly Arts Cooperative, which is housed in Bridgeport, and we're actually partnering with Coffee for Good and having a event in Greenwich tomorrow featuring our artists. And we also offer travel training, which allows for individuals to learn how to travel using transit independently. So that's in addition to all our other programs, our day and residential, etc. Like those. So that was, I was told to keep it about under 3 minutes. So I wasn't the person who put in the initial request. So they no longer work here, but I will answer any questions if you have any, or if you'd like to follow up with an email, I will be happy to follow up with any questions or answers.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the Kennedy Collective? I see none. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it and everything
And
we do.
and I do very much appreciate you guys letting me join tonight. I know it wasn't the initial time, and I hope you all have a wonderful meeting. Thank you again.
Thank you. We're going to move on to page 152, Human and Social Services. I see Director Julie DeMarco here. I'm not sure if Parks and Rec Director Anthony Calabrese is going to be online or if it's just you tonight, Julie.
I think he was going to sign on, but okay.
Well, he is online as well. Great. Go ahead.
It's not much of a change of a budget, but the changes are mostly payroll, you'll see, with the top two lines. And then towards the bottom is, the last thing is the senior center programming. That is that new line that we charge fees and membership fees. What? Okay, thanks. And we increased that, we increased that by 3,000 so that we could add an additional class. Happy to take your questions.
Is there any questions regarding this item? I don't. Oh, Representative Estrita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1. Just a question, because I know you touched on it, but I'm just trying to make sure I understand. You said about the senior center programming. You said something about charging fees, but I don't think I don't see anything in the revenue line item.
We do have revenue. I think the estimate is 83,000 that we would collect from fees and classes.
So in
85,000.
okay, so that basically your 85,000 revenue number for 2026 is the fees collected from the senior center.
It is.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Julie. How are you? Good to see you. I just want to ask a question. This is sort of what we're trying to do, is get ahead of some costs. I know we've had a lot of budget requests for transportation in the past. So I was just wondering how those vans are, and if you anticipate, I don't know, that your transportation line will be enough for this year.
I appreciate that. We are due to receive a new bus from a grant. Remember, we applied for those grants. It's 80% covered, and then we used 20% out of our donations, and I think it's 34,000 on that bus. That's due to come this summer, and that'll have 5 buses that are within 5 years old. We're in great shape with the actual physical buses, and the transportation. We have the drivers. It's not that it's been slow to pick up back from COVID, but we're managing it pretty well. There's not an over demand. We're doing evening programs right now and we're using the buses in the evening, and we're not going over. So we're in good shape for that.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding this department? Representative Steele?
Jeff Steele, District 3. Hello, Julie. one question. I know that there's a lot of change going on with, and I'm not going to get into the senior center, obviously, for obvious reasons, but is there a move to the senior center to the Turner, like to make it, to change it from a senior-based center to a large community center? Is that in the works? Is that something in the near term, medium term?
I'd defer that to the town.
Go ahead for Selectman Gerber.
The Turner Center you're asking about?
I think that was.
I mentioned that we are expecting to get the Turner Center, hopefully not in the too distant future, and that I would like to look at potentially have, it's 20,000 square feet. It's a large building that could hopefully hold multiple, could hold both senior and youth programs, make it more of a community center than just a pure, one or the other. It has to be used for recreational purposes.
Do you have
based
a
on the law.
timeline for that, Bill?
No. I mean, this has been going on for like 14 years. So, yeah.
I'm done with questions, but I just want to say, Julie, I think you're doing a great job. You run a great department.
Well, I know you're saying that, but
You're
I
doing
prefer we
a
wait.
great job. So I just want to commend you for all your work.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Thank you, Julie. We appreciate it. Moving on, solid waste, page 157. We have DPW General Manager John Cotel here. Welcome.
Good evening. So we have two parts of this budget. We have a revenue side and we have an expenditure side. The revenue side is past budgets were basically calculated on a 3-year average. This year, I got a little more in depth with it. If you recall, we increased our rates about a year ago, so we have a little bit more information on that, and I was able to drill down based on the different costs as to what type of MSW was being delivered, whether it was a residential, commercial, someone just driving up in a car. With that, if you have any specific questions regarding the revenue budget, I'm willing to try and answer them.
Are there any questions regarding the revenue items for this budget? Representative Rock.
Dave Rock, District 2. Just looking at the change line, seems like there's a lot of up and a lot of down, a lot of shifting between 25 and 26. And I just ask you to just take us through. There's a 47% spike, and then there's 16% down and 11% down. Can you help me with the revenue?
So again, as I was saying, we're going based, a part of it is a change in the fee structure that we are charging because we increased the rates. So that takes part of your increase on your bulky waste going up 47%, where we're actually recouping true costs for that. The ones going down, which was I think textiles, it's just pretty much of a based average on what we've been doing the past 3 years.
That answer your question, Representative Rock? Great. Representative Pistilli.
Hi, Sharon Pistilli, District 5. Historically, we used to receive like a pretty healthy rebate for recycling. And I know we're not recycling plastic anymore, but is there any kind of recovery for glass and metal that's still being recycled, or do we have to pay tip fees for that too now?
the cost for recycling is a cost. About when China decided to say we're no longer accepting the world's recycling market, which ended up in the oceans anyway, they cracked down on receiving it, and your recycling markets basically crashed pretty much. So now, instead of where at one point in time we were receiving $20 a ton, we are now paying upward to $100 a ton. Metal does have a positive value to it. There are certain other items that have positive values to it. Cardboard does have a positive value, but when you take into the account the entire recycling, being glass, being plastics, being contamination of having to get rid of it, which amounts to about 50% of what we actually do recycle, we're at a loss.
There's so much I could say, but I won't, so thank you.
Thank you, Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Liz Esmond, District 4. Good evening, John. I see that you've last updated your fees in 2024. How frequently are they updated? What's the time span usually?
Previously, they weren't updated for about 14 or 16 years. So that's why last year when I was looking at it, I felt that it was time that we update them. We are not updating this coming July, but I'd like to get on a schedule of every 2 years to at least update them to be somewhat representative of true costs as they appreciate.
That's great. Thank you.
I believe Representative Carson online has a question.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Now we can. Thank you.
Okay. Laura Carson, District 4. I listened to the Board of Finance presentation. I just want to clarify the rates for the cars. Did they go up $1 from $6 to $7? Am I right?
That is correct.
Okay, I'm just checking. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Josh Garskoff, District 5. I wanted to go back. You mentioned contamination, and that's about 50% of the cost. I think that's what you said. Yeah, is that people putting recycling in that is dirty or mixed or not able to be recycled? Is that what that means?
Contamination is several items on it. If you have a moisture problem, it's contamination. People, if they put their recycling out and it gets soaking wet and it goes in and gets delivered, there's certain moisture content of the cardboard and paper that winds up being contaminated. Your glass that's entered into it gets broken up, gets impregnated into cardboard or paper that's contaminated. Other items, people actually do throw things that are nasty into the recycling, thinking that's the place it can go. I won't go into details as to what, but it's part of that also.
Thank you. Could you put an estimated dollar amount on how much we're spending based on people recycling things that are inappropriately placed in the recycling bin?
It affects the way the recycling item is calculated. About 50% is contaminated. That drives your cost down. There's several items that increase the value of recycling, and there are several that reduce it based on, like I said, whether it's getting rid of glass or whether it's getting rid of contamination to where people put in the recycling goes up to the facility and then they turn around and have to truck it back down to the burn plant. For an exact dollar amount per ton, it could be $60, $70 a ton at least.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to make it complicated. I was trying to get a ballpark of what a message that might want to get out to the residents about how much money we're spending unnecessarily. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. I know it's not a question. I do have a question very quickly. This is a really good PSA because I'm going to do my recycling differently because of this conversation. So thank you. My question is, where in this is there a reflection of the food waste, the composting that we're doing? I'm just very curious as to where I can see that. Thank you.
Food waste would be in your expense budget. It's not your revenue. Food waste is actually a cost. We're probably spending about $8,000 roughly to get rid of food waste. That amounts to about 22 tons for a full year, and that's 22 tons out of 31,000 tons. So it's really a feel-good item right now. If you're looking at carbon footprints, you're generating more because we don't have a place that receives it nearby. Our food waste gets trucked up to New Milford or up to Southington at Quantum.
Are we charging for people to recycle their food waste?
No, we're not. That was a pilot program that was started. That's being continued. So we don't charge for them to be able to put their food waste at the transfer station. Otherwise, would be normally charged as a MSW rate. A regular car, $7 or more if it's a.
Thank you,
Wait.
Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Drew Georgias, District 9. I thought I heard the other night that that program is going to be stopped because of PFAS. The state's worried about PFAS in the composted waste. I thought I heard that when we were with the sewage treatment plant.
That is correct with the sewage, that the compost that was being developed from the sewage treatment plant has been stopped due to the PFAS. Currently, like I say, with the food waste that we have, it's being collected and taken to one place that composts it, the other place, which is Quantum Power up in Southington. They actually get the methane gas out of it and create an energy source to produce electricity.
So they're two separate sources of the composting, and the household is not affected.
There's two locations currently that that food waste goes to. The second is not a compost. It's a breakdown digester system.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, you want to go on with the other area?
All right, so on your expense side, the big change on this is your fees and professional services and your contracted property services. That's your big items there. Fees and professional services takes care of the hauling and the tip fees for both the solid waste and the recycling. We're among 12 other towns for the solid waste and recycling facilities that accept our material. We're in a 6-year contract with them. We're now, I think, in year 2. These are contractual increases that go up between 4 and 6% every year. Hauling portion of it also comes out of the fees and professional services. That is with our company, the Enviro Express. That was a RFP that went out last year. So this is the first year that we were in it. Those rates went up significantly for the hauling. So again, that's what generates that. On the contracted property services, that is for the operator to operate our transfer station. They have 2 individuals there. They have equipment there. They're the ones who load the compactors into the trailers, and at which point in time it gets hauled off site. And that's contractual increases after our bid.
Thank you. Any further questions on waste? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to page 125, 5011, DPW Administration. I believe our general manager in front of us, Mr. Cotel, will give us that. I don't know if Mr. Marsilio is online or not.
I'll handle it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for. So administration, generally, if you pretty much like last year's, you like this year's. The big change in this one is we had one individual who was a part-timer that is being changed to a full-timer. This individual gets involved in a lot of the deposits for your transfer station revenues, that tracks it all. Also goes after the accounts to collect and make them current regarding your solid waste haulers. We used to have aging reports where haulers used to owe us over hundreds of thousands of dollars, and with the efforts of this individual and the other office staff, we've been able to bring that down well under 100,000. As well as this individual also gets involved in tracking a lot of the utilities for us. With that, any other questions? I'll be willing to help you out.
Thank you. Any questions regarding DPW administration? Representative Steele.
Jeff Steele, District 3. John, just a quick question, and maybe I don't think you addressed it, but you said there was a transfer from someone going part-time to full-time.
Correct. So you'll see a minus for the part-time, is zeroed out, and then your revenue with an increase. You have a minus 18,252. That'd be line 51030, part-time payroll.
So when I look on page 127, personnel summary, there's a new secretary. I think that was added.
You have yes, you have a secretary B, and then under part-time, you have a zeroed out.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Representative Garskoff.
Thank you. Quick question, Josh Garskoff, District 5. Are we seeing case of the salary study adjustments in this where rates are changing significantly on different personnel?
In the total line, there'd be salary adjustments based on contractual. I would expect. If there's something else that you're alluding to, I'm not sure.
Some of the higher top of the department numbers look like they're changing. I just wondered if this, I think we heard 2 meetings ago about a salary study that was making some adjustments. I was just curious if this was part of that too. Okay, thank you.
First, Selectman Gerber said no, just so anyone who wasn't listening. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you very much.
With your permission, since I'll be doing the streetlights, which is the one right after engineering on your, if I can do that.
Oh, you're doing streetlights and Mr. Hurley? Okay.
Correct.
Page 117, 4070, we're jumping to streetlights.
So your streetlight bill is basically a calculation. It's based on the number of streetlights you have, how bright they are, and then how many hours they're on. The hours that they're on is calculated by DPUC. They have a rate structure based on how bright the light is as to what the cost is. And from there, it's just a straight calculation. We do not own the street lights that you see on the Cobra heads above it. UI does. So their cost per kilowatt hour encompasses all that amount.
Any Representative Garskoff?
Thank you. Is there an adjustment for LED bulbs in that calculation versus incandescent?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Georgiadis.
To follow up, Drew Georgiadis, District 9, to follow up on Representative Garskoff's comment, are all streetlights LED now? I know we've been transitioning in for traffic lights to LED, so I was wondering where the town stood on there.
Yes, I believe they all are.
Thank you.
Representative Estrita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Asterita, District 1. Just a quick question. So has the usage of our lights changed at all?
Probably about 8 years ago is when you went from the incandescent or the other type of lights, the yellow lights, to LEDs. When that happened, they dropped down your cost tremendously. As far as the increase in usage, it's a straight calculation of how many hours they're on And it'll vary each month. Obviously, your winter month invoice,
But that hasn't changed at all,
but that
right?
does not change.
So basically like the 9% increase here is basically just a 9% increase in the electric bill to run the lights, right?
Those are UI costs
Yeah,
because
okay.
they're maintaining items as well as the cost of electricity. I think I threw a 10% increase in there for delivery charges.
What's the breakdown between maintaining the lights and the cost of the electricity?
With the, most of your cost on this is them owning it and with the maintenance. So the percentage wise, you're probably talking all in for $1.16 a kilowatt hour. The actual kilowatts themselves might be only 11 cents. And then the cost of delivery might be $1, based on delivery as well as maintenance of it. So if you want to say maybe 9% is the actual cost of the power, and
Okay,
the other's
so
the cost of owning the lights.
okay, so the element of cost here is in essence renting the lights for all intents and purposes.
Correct.
Okay, I got you. Okay, thank you.
Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. A couple of questions. One, would you have any consideration to changing to like the hybrid solar lights? You know, like sometimes on the highway, they seem like they have lights that have solar arrays on top so we don't have to pay for electricity.
Realistically, I doubt it. And if they did that, that would be a fee that would be passed on to us into the value of the cost that they would recoup.
And then is there any consideration that maybe we don't need streetlights on so much? Like because of bird migration patterns, things like that. Like we don't need streetlights on so late, do we?
That was part of the whole push of the dark skies where your lights, they had the flat cutoffs when they changed them to the halogen lights and the other sodium lights to your LEDs. So they were changing out the heads so the heads are flat to shine down and not up. Question as far as your lighting as to how much the lights are on or lights are off. They don't, UI doesn't dim them. And I'm not sure what else to tell you on that aspect with it. It's just whether you want lights taken down, we can request to say, take these lights down.
So it's only binary. It's like they're light
Correct.
sensors and they're on or they're off. Okay, thank you.
Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Liz Esmond, District 4. This may be a rhetorical question, John, but this does not include any other lighting on town properties. This really is literally only street lights, correct?
It includes the decorative lights along the post road that you have, which are LEDs that we've changed out. That gets paid out of this account also.
Okay, thank you.
Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. The street lights, does UI pay tax on the street lights? I know that they pay taxes on other investments that they make in their equipment in town.
I don't have that answer. It's their infrastructure. I would expect that there's a certain amount of infrastructure that they're required to pay just as the other utilities, but I'd leave that to finance director if he knows it.
If you could just speak into the,
I believe there's an assessment, but I'll check.
That would be great. Thank you.
that was our CFO, Tom Harris, for those online. And online, we have Representative Kuhn.
Thank you. The utilities, the UI purchasing that we do here, is that part of my understanding is that the town bulk purchases its generation services for its electric bill. Is this part of that purchasing program?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Town town works with several other towns to buy in a larger quantity, and that's your supply, your generation
Okay.
supply. We get ours from Constellation, is the supplier.
Right. All right. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this item? Representative Steele. Oh,
Not the specific item. Can I ask one more DPW question? Since he's up there.
if you forgot, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I want everyone else to go on this question first.
I believe anyone other light questions? Representative Steele.
Thank you. Jeff Steele, District 3. Because the question was asked last night regarding the Board of Ed and contracting, I think just for full disclosure and transparency, does Becker Landscaping do any business with the town through DPW directly or indirectly, to your knowledge?
On the town side, I'm not aware of it, with Public Works.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's not a budget question anyhow.
Well, it has to do with the budget, and it was asked last night.
It doesn't have to do with money in the budget.
Of course it does. So look, I'm trying to be transparent here. It was discussed last night for Board of Ed. Why can't it be discussed tonight? I think this town needs to know, and that's it. I'm not insinuating anything, but it was asked last night, and I'm just curious what the
Hey, if you have a
relationship
money
is.
question, keep going.
Yeah, contracted property services, I see went up 68,000, I'm sorry. Is there any
What budget?
for public works operations?
Okay.
So is there, I guess my question is specifically regarding that line item, since I have to address something specifically in the budget.
Do you have a page
I'm
number,
sorry, it's
Representative Steele?
Yes, page 131,
Page 131.
line item 54010. It's a $68,000 increase.
Contracted property
Yeah,
services.
contracted property services.
What's your question?
So the question is, does Becker Landscaping do any business with the town directly or indirectly through DPW? I would assume in that line item, if at all.
I don't have them in that, any costs.
Point of
that I've
order.
used in that
Now,
line.
are you just being mean, or
No,
what are you doing? Yeah,
not-
what is your point?
Not at all.
Yeah, what is your point? Trying to go after my chief.
I'm not.
What is your point, Mr. Steele?
Representative Steele, I don't know how which contracting agency affects the budget.
My point is just this: if work is done there, then that filters up to the DPW director, who filters into reports to the COO. So I was just wondering.
I don't think that's related
I
to
don't
the budget.
understand.
It's related to our town sites. So I'm going to ask you to stop.
It's like a
and
personal attack.
We're
Not at all.
going to
Not
move
at all.
on.
There's no personal attack. It was asked last night at the Board of Ed. It was asked last night about the lowest bidder, and
And it shouldn't have been asked.
Right, and I'm just asking now.
We're gonna move on. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr.
I've got a
Patel?
question for Mr. Steele.
Is it related to the DPW budget?
No, it's, no.
We'll wait till the end. Thank you. Any other questions regarding the DPW budget? Representative Havey.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Lisa Havey, District 9. I have a question about budget number 54131. That I'm confused only because I was under the impression that we were paying for FTC electric bill as helping to start them up. And I'm surprised to see that we are still paying their electric bill. How much longer will we be subsidizing them?
So you're back in the DPW operations.
Page
for-
131.
For electric.
54131 utilities, electric, FTC. It's about the
We
middle
do-
of the page.
Yep, we pay their electric bill, yes.
Right, but when they opened up, how many years ago, I recall, and I could be wrong, and somebody will definitely point that out,
that it was to help them get going, that it was not going to be a permanent expenditure for the town.
That was before my time. I would have to say someone needs to then check the agreements.
Does anyone in administration know anything about that, the electric bill for FTC?
We'll go back and double check within the lease, but if I recall, that is something we cover in the lease.
It's
So
part of the lease
I'm
agreement. If you
pretty
could just
sure it
confirm with
was,
me,
but I'll
Mr.
go back
Becker,
and pull the lease.
that would be great.
Just to follow up, it's also gas and water and all of their utilities. Thank you very much.
Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. To follow up on the FTC, they're a nonprofit? Should that fall under our nonprofit area, right? They're a nonprofit?
Can someone from budgeting address how that's put into the budget?
But that would be if they were given a direct contribution. So if it was handled under the leases, then it's just part of the lease agreement, and then that's reported out once a year, and then part of the leases. So it's only when we make direct contributions that they go in the nonprofit section.
Okay, and because it's in a town building, it's slightly different?
Handled under leases. So most of those are, most of the leases where that happens, most or many are nonprofits, $1 a year, or terms. In the FTC agreement, there is a revenue, piece that comes back, and they, they have a payment structure. It may not fully cover utility as an example, but it's just handled as a lease item, because it's not a direct contribution. Like if we said every year we're going to get a FTC $15,000, then it would be listed and we'd have a payment and go through the budget cycle and do that. Whereas this is, if it's covered under a lease, whenever the lease comes up for renewal or when it was originally set, it comes to, would come to the RTM, and it's approved as a lease. But it's not a direct payment, so it wouldn't come under that section.
Do we have a lot of leaseholders that are nonprofits and fall under this kind of similar confusing way?
Quite a few. I'd have to go back to the lease report and then all the full leases for the details on them. And we did that a couple of months ago, and we could certainly redistribute that information from earlier in the year, so members can take a look at it.
Thank you, Representative Georgiadis. If you
I'd
want to
appreciate that. Thank you.
just remind me through a question.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, Mercy.
Representative Garskov.
I'm good. Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the DPW budget? Thank you, Mr. Kotal. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening.
You too. We're going to move on to page 139, 5070, engineering. We have our engineering manager, Bill Hurley, here. We went back old school when we realized that some people don't speak loud enough in the Zoom room.
Yeah, you get me going. I'm sure you can hear me. Anyway, good evening. Engineering has always taken pride in providing excellent service while being prudent. I can go over maybe 2 minutes real quick of what engineering does, just in case we have some new RTM members. An expanded update or a description of what engineering does is regarding traffic signals, for instance, we manage, administer, and prioritize 15 town-owned signals, including upcoming Sacred Heart Park Avenue signal replacement. We work with the DOT and assist and provide town input on 60 signals, including some preemption or some pedestrian improvements where possible. Currently, the town is implementing a traffic control center, which will be managed by engineering and involves a remote video inspection, repairs, equipment assessment, and potentially some analysis. For roadway and traffic, just recently, our senior civil engineer was named Complete Streets Coordinator and Vice Chair of, and including myself for a voting member for the newly formed FTA, Fairfield Traffic Authority. Engineering provides management and in-house designs for complete streets, traffic calming projects, spot locations, and drainage projects. For tide gates, engineering is managing some of the projects, working with the consultant and the conservation department, implementing repairs, project-based were based on the tide gate inventory that was performed last year, and also for some flood control projects. Bridges engineering manages 65 bridges and culverts by prioritizing those bridges based on condition and grant availability. Engineering designs, federal, state, local permits. We work with the contractors or DPW in those repairs. We reviewed and issued over 400 permits. We handle public requests for solutions to drainage problems, property information, new sidewalk requests, questions on their own property or even adjacent residential developments. We answer contractor questions. Any issues that come up, field investigations, and the Q alert system. Engineering works and provides technical knowledge with the WPCA general manager on certain WPCA projects, pump stations, sewer hydraulic analysis, laterals, as some of the examples. For the grants, we applied and designed and authored and obtained grants for funding for over 25 grants, and follow up with those grant items and reimbursements. And when the financial group, capital project group, have a grant manager, we'll work with them and assist them any way we can. I think that's my wrap up on what we do. We were hoping to, there was an engineer that that left for greener pastures, and we were hoping to implement that, but budget did not allow for that. So our budget is pretty much very lean, in my opinion. There were only really two significant increases. Fees and professional services went up $3,666. And that was mainly for, we were finding out that a lot of our projects now, especially that involve grants, have to go through what they call SHPO, State Historic Preservation. And so therefore we usually have to do a little sampling or hire like an archaeologist to confirm that there's nothing of special interest regarding historical nature of the property or the area that we're working on. And the other one was a $6,152 increase in communications, and that was pretty much all related to our traffic control center. So I'm here to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding this item? Representative Astorita.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astorita, District 1 Bill. Thanks for coming and congratulations. I think you're the major department that's had significant cost savings from year to year. So my question, it looks like you were able to do that by reducing a couple of bodies on your staff. The one that I am interested in is the reduction in a project manager. How will that impact your department? And do you have to make that up in different ways by saying hiring consultants or something like that?
It will affect us. We're doing the best we can with it. The capital project team has taken some of the projects, but not all of them, of course, because they all vary from ones that are, I'll say, in year 3 of the project that we're working on, and some of the ones that have special expertise or knowledge we're still working on. It really, it's just one of those things that we're going to try to do the best that we can, to be honest with you. As far as savings, I mean, on some of the projects, we've been able to save money performing the inspections. It really, we have to work with the capital group and come up with a plan of what projects are going to what division.
Is your plan basically to cover that function with what you already have internally with the capital projects group, or will you have to incur additional expense to try to cover that?
We don't know that yet, to be honest with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Liz Esma, District 4. Good evening, Bill. I think this question is for the administration, and I hear what you're saying about the changes in the operations area. So we do already running, I assume, have some ROI for the implementation of this operations group and the savings. Can we hear a little bit more about that, please?
Sorry, First Selectman Gerber.
Yeah, so the project management, first of all, was all done out of engineering before, and the project, a big part of the project management that was in engineering has moved into project management. So it's a separate team, but they work very closely together. More focused on project management, so there's less, initial, in the past there might be someone who, or even still, there is a senior engineer who would do design work and then manage a project. But the purpose of creating this group was to focus on project management. So a big part of what engineering had was project management. Now there's a project management team. So the idea is not to take something away from engineer, it's to move part of that function in engineering to a separate team. I think there is an issue that there's a ton of work, and there's always more work to do than we have resources to do it. And partly we go out and hire outside, consultants to do some work. Another part of the project management, the purpose of the project management team is to build project management expertise in-house so that we don't have to rely as much on outside consultants. And we have had the good fortune of saving money on things so far this year, significant hundreds of thousands of dollars on work that we would have paid a third party to do, because one of our project managers is a PE and is able to do some of the inspection work herself. I believe that was a savings of about $300,000. We also were able to some work on the field, on Roger Ludlow Middle School turf field. Eli Gazal was asked to take over as project manager on that. That was formerly a project under somebody that worked in Parks and Rec. So now the project management team is doing projects for everyone, including police, fire, and Parks and Rec. So Eli was able to save money on some of the environmental issues that, even though they cost a lot, it would have cost more. So he cut down by I believe it was $150,000, $200,000 from what the original plan would have been had he not taken that over. So we've seen some significant successes so far, and one of our project managers has more than paid for herself, maybe 2 times over in some of the work that she's been able to do. But David, you feel free to add if you'd like to. But I would say, and that Bill's very busy, and the project management team is very busy, and we have $500 million of projects on our capital waterfall, and we are still going to have to use outside consultants to get all of this work done, and Bill is extremely busy. So could we have used more bodies? Probably, and maybe next year we'll come in front of this body and ask for more bodies.
Thank you for that answer, and I want to commend this fiscal decision. I think it's been very good for the taxpayers and will continue to be so. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carson is online.
Laura Carson, District 4. Bill, can you just explain maybe I missed it. The senior civil engineer there were two positions, now there's one. What happened there?
We have two senior civil engineers. I don't know if that was something that, on the form that you have, does it say assistant engineering manager on yours form?
Yes, above it,
Yeah.
but
So,
there's nothing zero.
yeah, so we have the two senior civil engineers.
So, sorry, what, Marcy?
Go ahead, Representative Carson.
Wait, just explain the numbers then. So what are the right numbers? Two senior civil engineers at what cost?
Well, it's, if you just take out assistant engineering manager, and this is from HR, I'm quoting, if I'm misquoting, then you'll have to check with them. But assistant engineering manager, you would scribble that out and put senior civil engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and then underneath it is the other senior civil engineer.
Got it. Got it, thank you. And it's one.
Thank you, Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. Bill, just out of curiosity, in terms of your staffing needs, thinking maybe into the future, if project management is now in a different department, is there more engineering staff or skilled staff to execute that you would want, or is it just that in general more project managers would be helpful?
Well, it would mainly be for answering drainage complaints. And as I said before, having somebody assist with the inspection of the bridge and culverts. We could always use someone with more GIS knowledge. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could use assistance on.
Some of these sound like they're sort of not necessarily senior level positions, right? The inspection and the drainage complaints seem like you don't need.
Well, there's a difference. When I say inspection, there's a difference. When someone's inspecting a bridge or confirming a report or inspecting some repair work, that's a little bit different than, say, an inspection of a driveway apron or, some drainage or a minor project. So they would have to be a little bit more than basic. Mhm.
Any other questions regarding this item? Oh, First Selectman Gerber.
I was just going to sort of follow up on what Bill said. Some of the, these inspections and permitting is pretty high level work, right? These code reviews. And I think, had we not had such a large, budget increase, especially, with Board of Ed this year, looking at the amount of work that one of the senior civil engineers is doing on complete streets. She's become the Complete Streets coordinator. That's Mega Jane. She's done a lot of code reviews. I think next year we're probably going to have to revisit that, because for the type of code review that you would have a senior civil engineer doing, that's not a beginning job. So, but she's really wrapped up in a lot of the street safety architecture work. So.
Yeah, in the interest of time, I didn't mention, but the town does help like a dozen different town departments, zoning reviews, conservation reviews, building permits, and we assist several town organizations and commissions as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hurley. We appreciate it.
Thanks, and I'll give everybody a quick update. The Perry's Green project is substantially complete and within budget, and engineering was also able to save approximately $100,000. So it's a lot of part of the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any update on the culvert? The tide
Representative
gate?
Georgiadis. Ask that offline. We're gonna, thank you.
If you're referring to the one on Riverside Road,
Yeah, let's
my
talk
number.
this
We can talk.
offline. It's
Yeah,
not
well,
budget
yeah, that's not
related at the
budget,
moment. Thank
exactly.
you.
No problem. Drew knows where to find me.
All right, thank you. We're going to move
Have a good
on.
night.
Thank you. To police, page 109, 4030. We have Police Chief Robert Calamaris and Deputy Chief Eddie Waya here. Welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for having us. Good evening, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to present our budget. I hope you all have had a chance to go through our proposal packet to get an in-depth look at our needs and the main drivers behind our FY26 proposal. As we introduce our budget and highlight key areas, I want to emphasize that this proposal is the result of careful analysis and thoughtful planning over the past year. Our focus has been on ensuring that the Fairfield Police Department remains equipped to meet the needs of our growing community while maintaining the high standard of service that our residents expect and deserve. One of the most significant challenges we face is the strain on our personnel. While our officers continue to uphold their duties with professionalism and dedication, we must acknowledge the increasing demands placed on them and take meaningful steps to address these challenges. A long overdue investment in staffing is necessary, not just to enhance public safety, but to support the well-being of the officers who serve the community. With that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Wire to walk you through the specifics of the budget.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you all for giving us the opportunity to present tonight. I'll give a high-level overview with the primary focus on the main driver of the increase, which is our need to increase staffing. Simply put, increasing our staffing improves our ability to keep pace with the growth of the town and to sustain the highest level of service possible, all while maintaining the health and wellness of our officers. We are unfortunately in a staffing deficit that can be felt operationally, functionally, financially, and concerning officer wellness. Past practice of trying to make do with our roster as is no longer sustainable. Over the last year, we did our due diligence in analyzing and determining what the minimum ask was in order to achieve observable and measurable impact, and which would bring us out of our aforementioned deficits. If fiscal feasibilities were not a part of the conversation, increasing our roster by 8 strategically placed personnel would fill critical gaps in supervision, would increase our patrol presence, and would start to eliminate repeated forced overtime, which is the main cause of our compounding overtime overages and increasing officer burnout. All of that said, we are aware that this is a large town with a lot of departments who are also experiencing pressing needs, and we do not presume that our needs are higher priority than others. We are conscious that the cost of adding 8 officers in one budget season lacks feasibility. And as such, our ask for this fiscal year will be to increase our roster by 5 personnel, with an understanding that while this will ease our deficits, it will not eliminate them, and thus we will hope to continue phasing in additional personnel in coming fiscal years. Other highlights of our FY26 budget are seen in our IT line, communications line, and our newly established tactical equipment and supplies line. The increase in our IT budget is primarily due to the reallocation of approximately $36,000 from fees and professional services into the IT line, where these services can be more accurately tracked and funded. The increase in our communications budget is driven by a combination of annual escalators and the growing reliance on mobile devices and technologies in everyday communication and investigations. All communication-related technology, including cradle points and modems, as well as mobile devices and their associated service contracts, are funded through this line. Our newly developed tactical equipment and supplies line has been created to better track expenses for equipment and supplies of a tactical nature. The most expensive of these items being ballistic vests and ammunition, which were historically funded in the training line, clothing line, and special departmental supplies line. By consolidating these costs into a single line, we aim to improve efficiency in tracking and planning for these expenses. The requested budget for this new category is $82,000, with much of this amount offset by reallocating expenses from the training, clothing, and special departmental supplies lines based on 3-year averages of related expenses. In closing, our budget proposal is the result of a thorough, data-driven analysis of our department's needs and the most responsible path forward. We recognize the financial realities the town faces, and we have structured our requests to balance necessity with feasibility. While staffing remains our most pressing concern, we are committed to a phased approach that ensures sustainable growth while maintaining public safety and officer wellness. We appreciate your time, consideration, and partnership in making Fairfield a safer and more resilient community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the police? Representative Horton.
Hi, Margaret Horton, District 10. I had a question about staffing, but not so much about the officers, but social workers. I noticed that you still just have a request for one FTE, and I'm actually kind of wondering if that's enough to maintain sort of that robust community policing. I just think that that's such an important element. I noticed also, I saw the ad this week for looking for an MSW intern, which is phenomenal. But that, supervising an intern takes a minimum of like 1 hour a week away from the social worker. And so do we need more? Do we have enough?
Right now, I think we're operating efficiently, but we do see a growth in that area. And I do think that eventually we may be looking at asking for potentially another social worker. We would like to see the intern program work out first and kind of see how that goes. But as a police department, obviously our most pressing needs are police personnel, and that's where our focus is right now.
Thank you. And I do hope that you'll be able to grow that program. I think it's really critical.
Thank you, Representative Estrada.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Can't even say my own name. Ken Astorita, District 1. Gentlemen, thank you for coming and thank you for everything you guys do for the town. Just a couple of questions. One, a clarification question. I think you said you were adding 5 bodies this year. I only see 4 in the budget book here. What am I missing?
So originally we asked for 4, and then in subsequent discussions, we realized that one position was lost in translation, and we had a subsequent meeting where there were changes made, and adding one more personnel to our budget was one of those changes.
And that's is that a regular street officer or?
That will fund a sergeant position.
Okay. And then my other question is regarding the revenue from the automated enforcement. When do you guys expect to see that starting? And if there are any potential delays in that, how does that impact that revenue estimate number?
Well, I don't think we can say how, if it's going to impact the estimate number. I mean, obviously, the longer it takes, the less revenue that will be driven from that program. I can say that once we submit the requests to the state, they have a maximum of 60 days to approve those requests. So I would say between 4 to 5 months, all in. I'm hoping
4 to 5 months before the first revenue starts to come in from that. Is that what you're saying, Chief?
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Colburn.
Colin Colburn, District 8. Thank you guys for coming. On the camera question, so you said 60 days the state has. Have we submitted yet?
We have not. We are just about to advertise the RFP process. Vendors will submit their questions, and we'll do our best to answer those questions, and then we'll hope to get a few vendors that are interested in the program and try to select a vendor. Once a vendor is selected, they do most of the analytics behind our submission to the state. In fact, for the most part, they're a consultant that kind of packages it up and then we just submit that with our signatures on it up to the state. So it would be in their best interest to get that done as soon as possible so that we could submit those applications to the state and get a return on the application from the state as quickly as possible.
So we're roughly looking at earliest being October of this year?
Yeah, I don't want to.
I understand you might not want to speculate, but
Yeah, I
but
really don't want to speculate.
I'll leave the statement on the floor and we can just leave it there.
Yeah, and
Um,
I only say that, and please just let me touch on that. I only say that because, you know, when we select a vendor, we have to enter into a contract with them. And when, just like anything, you know, contracts need to be negotiated. We need to, you know, vet out the companies, and all those things have to take place. And that could take a day, and it can take 4 weeks or 6 weeks. So, you know, I'm cautious about putting a timeline on this thing, but I do understand that people are a little anxious about the revenue that is projected.
Yeah. I know the city of Stamford, a year ago this month, April 1st, approved their version of an RTM, approved the same cameras. They are currently not up and live. Have we talked to them and understanding what's the holdup with on their end?
Yes, we've been in contact with Stanford the entire process. We're somewhat using them as a model. They have a different program that they're doing, and but at the same time, we're talking with their engineers to make sure that we're following the process that they are, and we're kind of trying to, I guess, not make some of the mistakes that they have made along the way.
Okay, that's good to know. I do have a lot of concerns on the revenue side of this with getting this actual revenue. Because if we're looking at 3-4 months gone into the fiscal year without this actually being up, that's a lot of tickets, right? Like that's a lot of tickets that we got to be issuing in order to make that 875 number, right?
Thank you. We've discussed this before, so with the budget. We'll go on to the next question. Any questions? Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Thank you for coming. My question is about, I know a lot of police departments have foundations, and we have the Fairfield Police Foundation. And they often, I mean, obviously we're not New York City with tens of millions of dollars, but I think they fund the canine, right? While you're doing the budget, how do you decide what's going to come out of the foundation? It's not obviously not listed here because it's a separate financial area for you. But I was just sort of wondering, because we do have, you know, like with tactical equipment supplies, went from 0 up to 82,000. So could you sort of discuss how you manage that as a separate item for your police department?
So the foundation is a 501c3, and it's in place to cover anything that we would think are necessary expenses that would not be something that you would see in an operational budget. Primarily, the funds are raised for officer wellness programs. It supplements gym memberships and things that keep our officers physically and mentally fit. And then on the other side, it funds our canine program, which is not in our operational budget. And we've been lucky to have a steady stream of donors that have kept the program vibrant for all of these years. And as far as the tactical line, the majority of the funds that we're requesting in the tactical line are offset by reductions in the other 3 lines that used to fund those expenses.
Okay, I just wanted to know, I know in the past, you know, you read crazy things like they bought a tank. So I was just wondering how you manage your foundation. So thank you very much.
If I may just add to that, the members of the board are citizens of the town. So those board members make the decisions on what we do for health and wellness of our officers, and in fact the canines as well. So anything that we plan on purchasing or supporting, let's say if we wanted to buy a treadmill for our workout area, we would have to bring that item before the board, cost estimates, and then they would have to approve it. And both the deputy chief and I are ex officio members in that board, non-voting.
That's good to hear, because I had been approached by someone to donate to the dogs, and the foundation listed was someplace in California. So I'm glad to know that the board members for our foundation are here in Connecticut. I mean, here in Fairfield. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. Good evening. same question in a way that I posed to Mr. Hurley. It would be great for us to just have an idea of what would fully staffed look like and a sense, because I'm sure you've already thought, like, what does phasing in look like so that we're prepared to support that.
So when we were doing our analysis, we used a big whiteboard and we drew our entire organization and we kind of took a look at where the holes are. And we have two separate issues. We have one issue, which is kind of the ecosystem that exists within the four walls of the police department, where it's the bureaus and the divisions that keep the building running, you know, making sure that the cars run, the computers are working, the lights go on. And we have a couple of holes in supervision in those bureaus. And then on the other side is what we consider the more pressing issue is fewer officers on the road than we would like to see, considering the increase in quantity and types of services that are requested by the community. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit. Pretty much every weekend, Friday, Saturday night, there's kind of a standing order that we want 2 officers down at the Seagrape, 2 officers at South Bay, 2 officers at Illicit Brewing. That's 6 officers out of our 8 officers who are working before we even start taking any calls. And then when you start factoring in contractual time off, somebody takes a vacation day, somebody takes a sick day. Now we're down less, we're in a negative already. So the way that we reconcile that is we offer for officers to come in and fill those vacancies on overtime, but we're in a situation where a lot of the officers don't want to work that overtime. So now we're mandating overtime and forcing overtime. And it creates this compounding effect where the same officers, because it kind of goes in seniority, the same officers every weekend are getting ordered to work and work and work, and they're burning out. So then the second they have a chance to use their contractual leave time to recover, they do, and then we have more vacancies. So now we have this compounding effect of officer burnout and overtime overages. Not to mention the fact that we don't have the amount of officers on the road for safety purposes that we want and need. So that's where our focus went this year. So phase 1 is to fill those holes in the patrol division. And that would be 5. Yeah, it would be 4 officers and one supervisor. And then next year we'll start looking at filling the holes in supervision that are inside the building.
How many, was it 2? How many supervision? 3 for the building?
It would be 3.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Carson online. Representative Carson, I think you're still muted.
Hi, yep, and you can hear me now. It's Laura Carson, District 4. I just need clarification in the budget summary. You said the budget request increase. One of the things is mandated changes in training. And when I look under the line for training, 58110, the number went down. So is it somewhere else? I'm not sure where that is, why it went down, if it's increasing.
So that goes back to the reallocation of funds into the tactical equipment and supplies
Yes.
line.
Oh,
So
okay, so that's part of
historically-
tactical equipment and supplies. Okay,
Correct.
got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Liz Esmond, District 4. Good evening. I have 2 questions. One is to go back to Representative Horton's question about the social worker. Obviously, I agree with her. I think, and you probably would agree that it would really benefit the department. Is it ever the outcome or the objective here that you actually could reduce by 1, your head count? In the field, is it possible that someone in this position is actually allowing you to not have to dispatch or utilize officers for things that they are trained to handle?
The only area where it really helps us as far as call volume is before we had a social worker, we were relying heavily on our crisis intervention team. And that's not a separate division. Those are officers who take on extra work. So having a social worker to relieve them of some of those duties, it just kind of brings them back down to a normal caseload versus what was an excessive caseload before.
Okay, thank you. And on the speed camera revenue, if I can correlate these two, when I now look at your weekly statistics on traffic and, motor vehicle stops, I would say that is a conservative estimate on the revenue. Just when I look at the volume of what the traffic division is doing, they're doing a great job, and those are really eye-opening statistics. So I think, look, it may be a one-year thing because it's a deterrent, but I think that revenue is well more than justified.
Thank you. Representative Wolk.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Wolk, District 5. Hey, guys. So my question is related to Representative McCabe's question about personnel and staffing. So I remember former Chief McNamara bringing up looking into bringing in, to fill more officers from colleges who have college degrees like you guys have. Is that something that you guys are reaching out to colleges for employment?
Yeah, we do not only advertisements, we do a huge social media drive, as was done in January and February. In the first week of March, we completed our recruitment effort, and that included several colleges where we go there, we post up and do, job market advertisements and recruitment at local colleges.
Yeah, because he was saying that college people who have college degrees are less apt to showing more restraint. So that's the reason why I brought it up, as far as in some crazy situations that you guys get into. So thanks. Thank you.
Representative Ludwig-Sack.
Christine Ludwig-Sack, District 8. Gentlemen, thank you for your service and thank you for your time tonight. Quick question for you regarding the in revenue, the police alarm ordinance. Just curious with that, between 2022 and 23, it nearly doubled. Just wondering if you could speak to what that pertains to exactly and that change and how you're projecting that, please.
Absolutely. So alarm ordinance, we estimated 17,660 for a 1,968 or 12.5% increase over FY25. Homeowners and business owners get billed after we receive a certain number of false alarms in a certain period. And these numbers fluctuate mostly with weather trends and conditions where high winds and power outages drive up the number of false alarms. So we use the 3-year average for our FY26 number estimation, and that's where that number came from.
So then it was likely more weather related or something with that bigger change or larger difference? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the police? Seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Moving on to page 88, 3090, tax collector. We have David Kluitsky, sorry, online, I believe. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I know everyone pays their taxes here, so I'll just give a quick rundown of my department. So the tax collector's office, we are a high volume customer service department. We handle over 187,000 tax transactions annually. We collect over 300 million in revenue. This equates to over 90% of all revenue collected for the town. I'm very proud of my staff. I can say that over the last 3 years, we've maintained a healthy collection rate of over 99% for the past 3 years, as I mentioned. All the while that during all of this, my staff is still maintaining superb customer service for all residents and taxpayers of Fairfield. So with that said, the primary driver on the expenditure portion of my budget is contractual rate increases on the salary line due to step increases within the union. Also, any remaining increases are minimal, but primarily inflationary due to the printing and mailing of over 80,000 tax bills. So With that said, I welcome any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for our tax collector? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on to our tax assessor, page 84, 3050. We have Ross Murray here to give us that update. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me tonight. So I am the tax assessor for the town of Fairfield. Our department is responsible for the valuation of real estate, motor vehicles, and the business personal property. Tom did ask me tonight if UI pays personal property, and they do to us. They file a declaration and pay taxes through the collector's office. We also are responsible for the elderly and disabled program, the renters program, which is comparable to the elderly and disabled just for renters. We do the farm forest classifications, and we also do exempt entities, entities that wish to be exempted from taxes. We approve them. On the budget, I'll just touch on 3 areas where we have changes. The first is the IT and software. That's our contractual increases for the various software programs that we use, primarily our CAMA system from Vision Appraisal and our admin and personal property system from Quality Data Service. The other is our travel and meetings is up almost $1,400, and that is to cover employee who is taking courses to obtain his certification. The last one is a significant decrease in the fees and professional, and that is due to the cost of the revaluation. This is the 3rd budget cycle that we've had funding, and we are now, in next fiscal year, we'll be closing that out. So this is the balance that we project will be due for the revaluation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Georgiadis.
Hi, Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Just to follow up on your comment about the travel and meeting and the employee who's traveling a lot to get their certification. In their contract, do they say once they get certified, they'll stay with the town for a certain number of years?
Well, they're not contract employees. They're hired through the union. And no, there is no requirement that they stay.
Thank you.
Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. Thank you so much, Mr. Harris, for that quick turnaround. A quick question for Mr. Murray. In the UI tax assessment, does that include the street lights?
I believe it does. I'd have to double check their filing. Personal property is self-declaring, so they would they tell us what their assets are, but that should be part of it. But I can double check that.
Thank you. And then a second question concerns commercial properties and tax arrearage. Do you have I don't know if this is something that you would know, but wondering how many commercial properties are behind on paying their taxes for more than a year, if you have a sense of that.
That you'd have to check with Dave on. He's the tax collector. I wouldn't know.
If you want to ask that question through me, you can, Representative McCabe. Thank you. Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. Thanks, Ross, for being here. You might not be able to answer this on the spot, and I should probably know the answer, but could you parse out for us how much of this budget is spent on making seniors aware of the senior and disabled tax relief program?
I don't know if there's a cost in that. We advertise through the First Selectman's newsletter and through the social service newsletter. We attempted a mailing a couple of years ago and really had a very minimal response to it.
Getting all the seniors' attention on Instagram. All right, thanks.
Any other questions for our tax assessor? First Selectman Gerber wants to make a question.
This isn't a question. I just want to add something about, utilities. We are about to, or very much at risk of losing one of our largest taxpayers, the Aquarian Water Company, which the Southwest Regional Water Authority has put in a bid to buy it. If that goes through, we will no longer receive taxes on, and they're one of our largest taxpayers. It's about $1.8 million per year. We will receive payment in lieu of taxes, which could vary going forward, so it puts us at risk. I've been trying to get traction on this with the public. We've been put several things in our newsletter. I've written about it. I've talked to the press. I just want to make sure everyone's aware that this isn't necessarily a good deal for Fairfield.
Thank you. Any other further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Murray. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Good night.
Moving on to page 74, 3010 Finance, our CFO, who's been here all 3 nights, Mr. Harris, welcome.
Thank you. The revenues on page 77, I will first, about 8.5 million of the revenues here are.
You just have to push the microphone closer to you, too. I think.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. 8.5 million of the revenues are derived from recurring revenues that are derived from the state. And the programs that they relate to are included or are described in the narrative. The Board of Finance made 4 changes to the revenue budget, and I'll discuss those. Object number 40040 was increased by 152,000, and that increase was due to the fact that we got updated information from the state. We also had an increase in object 42512, and there are several items listed here, but it's the one that goes from 0 to 87,000, and that increase is due to the fact that we had a lease that was renewed that was not reflected in the original budget. One of the larger increases related to dividend and interest income, and that's based on a calculation of interest income of aligning it to the individual holdings in the portfolio. About 73% of the total holdings have maturity dates that will arrive after fiscal 26. And basically what we did with those assets was to use the coupon rate and calculate the interest for the holding period for the fiscal 2026. For the holdings that matured during the fiscal year, we calculated the interest to the maturity date and assumed that the accrued interest and the principal will be reinvested at 3.75%. Those are the items that are at risk. So if you assume that there's a 25 basis point change in interest rates, that's about $160,000 impact. But nevertheless, that is one of the increases that the Board of Finance made. The other change relates to the Port Authority. The original budget assumed that the Port Authority revenue would be rolled into the Finance Department, and subsequently we've decided that Parking Authority, New York City, the Parking Authority, will be operated as a standalone department. So revenues and expenses will flow through that operating unit. There are a couple of other items that I will mention. There is a fairly significant change in lease revenues. Object 42.
Speak into the microphone.
42512. It shows up in the fiscal 25 was 177,000, and the budget for 2026 is 14,000. That decrease is due to a couple of things. One is there's a reclassification of income from, it's a cell tower communication lease that was reclassified to communication revenues down below. But it also included about $70,000 in 2025 that related to a lease that we planned to enter into with Dish that was not, did not materialize. So that is zero in 2025 and of course zero in 2026. So that accounts for that significant drop. I'll also just mention briefly the bank fees. It's a fairly large number. In fiscal 25, there was a large billing from the bank after the merger between M&T and People's Bank. We are in the process of analyzing the fees, and I think that number will be significantly lower for the fiscal year. And again, we're analyzing the transactions that have been processed and the fees, related fees. We also are going to be engaging with, discussions with other banks just to look at other opportunities. So net, the changes that the Board of Finance made was a decrease in total revenues of about $19,000. If there are questions on revenues, I'll address those before I move to expenses.
Are there any questions regarding the revenues? Seeing none, go ahead and move on to the next part. Thank you.
There have been one change in the expense line, and basically the expenses are payroll related. The original budget assumed that we would reduce headcount by one staff person. The assumption was that person would move into the capital projects group. That individual had worked primarily on, well, a significant amount of her time had been devoted to WPCA and capital type projects. So the plan is to move her into the capital projects group. She still will be available to assist the accounting group on a limited basis. That's an agreement that David and I have. But we've also reduced an additional headcount, and that's due primarily to the fact that we are nearing the completion of the implementation of Paycom, the payroll system. And we're also looking at trying to really mechanize some of the processes that we currently do manually. For example, we do a number of our bank reconciliations manually, and we're looking to do purchase or at least software to do that. So that was the one expense change. So if you have other questions on expenses, I'll be happy to take those.
Are there any questions regarding the finance expenses? Representative Estrada.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Asterita, District 1. Tom, welcome. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you.
My question on the expenses is probably more for Bill and David, though, because I see the revenue for the parking authority, but where in the budget book would I find the expenses for the parking authority?
Well, the original budget assumed that those expenses would be absorbed within in a fund in the parking authority, and now there is a separate department where both the revenues and expenses will be included. And again, the decision to establish the department was made subsequent to when this budget book was originally prepared.
So none of those expenses are reflected in here.
Not in this book.
Yeah,
no.
and Representative Estrada, we do have a separate topic on the parking authority, so we could ask then if.
Okay, sorry, thank
That's
you.
that's okay,
I forgot
but
it, yep.
there'll be plenty of information provided then as well. So,
Thank you.
any other questions for finance? Representative Colburn.
Thanks very much. Colin Colburn, District 8. Just one quick question. There was, you walked through, I'm going back to the revenue side, sorry. You walked through a bunch of changes on the revenue. Can you just give us the total number for revenue with all the updates?
Yeah. It's 18,696,277. So it's, there was a reduction of $19,065 from the original budget.
Thanks very much.
Any other questions regarding finance? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to human resources. I believe our Assistant Director, Peter Ritchie, is here. Welcome. Is Ms. Simpson online? I'm not, is it just you today, which is great? Either way, not to.
No, nothing personal, I understand completely. I believe Kathleen is, the director is intending to join remotely. I don't see her there. Kathleen? No. Okay. We had chatted. She has some difficulty.
I'm sorry, it's page 63.
Very good. She had had some difficulties with eye surgery recently, not to get sharing too much, but she's been sharing a lot of that generally. So she has some difficulty driving at night. But I'll go ahead and read the introductory paragraph that you all have in front of you. Department of HR is responsible for the following employee-related functions: labor relations, personnel administration, employee benefits, and staff services. And based on recent audit recommendations, the department has updated our job descriptions to include expanded payroll processing. The department also is responsible for townwide freedom of information requests, risk management, Americans with Disabilities Act areas, otherwise known as ADA compliance. Managing these functions requires the interpretation and application of federal and state laws, collective bargaining agreements, town charter and codes, and various other regulatory and statutory mandates affecting public employment. The department also provides advice and consultation to approximately 500 full-time town employees, 170 part-time employees. During the season, we spike with about 375 seasonal employees and approximately 500 retirees. We also have responsibility for approximately 650 Board of Education, bargaining unit, and exempt employees for retirement counseling and processing. That's the overview as you have it there. I believe generally what you see within the book is how we are presenting our budget. I believe there may have been one change, which is in our communications line, where we had in the prior meetings approved for $3,000 for fiscal year 26, which is our cell phone line.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding human resources? Representative Colburn.
Colin Goldburn, District 8. Heart and hypertension, what is that? And just give us some detail there. I don't remember that from last year, but not that I remember everything. So it just seems like an odd one. So just curious.
I'm gonna pass to Tom. That's an area of HR which is reflected under workers' compensation, but really not part of the human resources space. So I'm going to defer to Tom if he has any comments or wish to comment on that.
Well, it's a coverage that relates to, I think it's firemen and police. But there was in terms of the accounting, in the past, it was included in the general fund. The liability was transferred to the internal service fund effective July 1st. And the reason we did that was the fund balance had really kind of built up. And it is also consistent with how other towns do it.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding human resources? Representative Steele.
Jeff Steele, District 3. Hi, Peter. You had been handling risk management up to now. Has that changed? I can't remember if that's moved out to a different department.
No, there is discussions about having that moved out of HR, but I've been on an interim basis trying to cover that space.
Do you know where it's moved out of yet, or is that again still in discussion?
I believe that's still part of the discussions.
Okay.
I know there's some discussion for fiscal year 26, but I don't have the latest update.
It's currently in the budget, and it would move to the operations group, and it's the Board of Finance made an adjustment. I don't know the exact numbers. I think it was roughly 120,000 for a full-time risk manager person. So that would, in theory, that would start 7/1 dollar-wise. We probably soon will go out and start looking for someone. That usually takes a month or two, anyways.
And how is it in that new department, though?
What's that?
How is it in the new project department?
I'm not sure what.
No, I'm just
question
repeating
is.
it. I just wanted to confirm what you said. You said it would, on 7/1, that position would just move over into.
Well, right now it's in human resources, and it's one of many hats that the assistant director has. It would be a full-time individual person for risk management. There was discussion about adding under risk, because there's a risk tied to it and a nexus to a lot of items, some preparedness support as well. Plans and coordination and whatnot, and then the risk nexus to the town as a whole, and certainly all of our departments. We obviously have a pretty big footprint as a community, so it would live there as a standalone, full FTE headcount. Whereas now it's something that the assistant director certainly he's managing it, but I mean he has a lot on his plate.
Selectman Gerber, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just a little more color. We used to have a full-time risk manager, and that position was eliminated under the prior administration. That the prior administration gave the risk management work to HR. And Peter has for a long time indicated that he didn't think that he was that was the most efficient place to have that work done, and that we should have a full-time risk manager. This is something we've been talking about in front of the Board of Finance for a long time. We put in for some less than full-time. Someone we were thinking we were going to go for somebody who may be retired. Put in something like $76,000, and the Board of Finance thought that was a mistake and increased the range to up to $120,000, so that we could go out and hire somebody full-time. What they will do is all of the insurance lines, but also take a more proactive approach to pursuing claims. When we have car crashes with our police cars and things like that, making sure that we pursue those and get reimbursed where it makes sense, as well as you may recall, we had some issues with some of our construction management with Penfield Pavilion, where we couldn't. We were having issues getting insurance for the construction phase of that project. We thought that was a weakness as well. Being in the operations group, this person will have a better feel for, and being in the meetings, they'll have a better feel for all of the various operational risks that are out there that we talk about every day on our streets and in our various departments. But this position could sit in finance or operations. Really, it could go either way, but we thought operations might make more sense, at least initially. If it doesn't make sense, we could always move it to finance.
Thanks for that color. And I think it's a great move to have a dedicated person in risk management. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for Human Resources? Representative Druniak.
Hi, Eric Druniak, District 6. I just had a couple of insurance-related questions. Looking at the property insurance, there's a 19.1% increase. Is that mostly from premium increases, or did you have to obtain additional coverages?
So generally, that is to do a little bit with premium increases. There's also reevaluations that go on relative to the property itself, and so all that gets factored in, and that's where the resulting is. It's we have been working closely with our broker, the third-party broker that we utilize on behalf of the town because of the complexity and then of this space, and have recognized with all of the challenges in the insurance industry in general, that's also having some degree of influence over premiums and things of that nature. So.
And just for the one right below it, the E&O, it's always nice to see that go down, but was that also some premium decreases or the errors and omissions?
I have to get back to you on that. I don't have an answer for you.
All right, thanks.
First Selectman, do you have an answer, or are you talking?
I believe that was a premium decrease, but I can't tell you why.
Wow, that's a big decrease. That would be great.
If you can get that to me, if anyone has the answers to that, and if you want to just send a reminder to me, that would be great. Thank you. Any other questions for HR? Seeing none, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
You too. We're going to move on to page 22, 1010, First Selectman's Office. We have First Selectman Bill Gerber here.
I got it. Just because my hand was shaking. It's probably easiest to start on the personnel summary page. So the communications director was budgeted for 93,600 this past year, but that under part-time, that is flipped over to full-time because Lisa Claire has been really bumping up against going over the allotted number of hours that she can work as a part-time employee. And the work keeps coming in greater and greater volume, including, coordinating with each of our departments, public relations people, and taking the lead on some significant campaigns, which I talked about the other day. The other major change is in the chief administrative officer line. That was the former, that was the former chief administrative officer, David Becker, to my right, was at one point taking dual role as CFO and COO, and his salary as CFO was increased to $170,000 during the fiscal year 25. So the number of 131,118 is actually not an actual. His salary stayed the same when we hired Tom Harris as CFO. David moved full-time into the COO role at the 170 salary. So there's been no increase in his salary, but there is an increase compared to what Tom Bremer was making as chief administrative officer. The deputy chief of staff increase was a long overdue increase in Jen Carpenter's compensation, and this was result of we did multiple market surveys of compensation. Chief of staff was one of them, where the 116,914 from the prior year came in at the very bottom of the range that we were seeing, or that HR was seeing. So that position was increased. My understanding is that position was sort of on the docket for being increased under the prior administration as well. The 16,354 in interns versus 0 in the prior year. We have had interns for many years. Interns were paid out of various pockets within the administration. In the past, we're trying to consolidate that all under my office. So this really does, it's not, it wasn't 0 last year. We had several interns in various places. This is really just reflecting, we're going to consolidate that and formalize the internship program a little bit more than it used to be. Used to be a little bit, sort of up to individuals and a little catch as catch can. Those are the main drivers. The 38,800 decrease in educational and memberships is because we moved CCM, the annual CCM subscription, which is used by a lot of people, including various town bodies. We moved that to administrative services out of the first selectman's office. So you'll see that in a minute. That will be an increase on the other side. Any questions?
Are there any questions, Representative Garskoff?
Thank you, Josh Garskoff, District 5. Just a quick question about the communications director shifting from part-time to full-time. Am I reading this right, that the part-time salary was 93,600 and the full-time salary is 98,500? How does that work?
Yeah, it was because she was doing the maximum number of part-time hours at a rate that got us to a budget of 90, of the 93. Full-time, she didn't really get much of an increase, but for her, the additional cost wouldn't be reflected here. It'd be reflected in HR under health benefits. So that's sort of like a 25% load.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on from First Selectman's Office to Administrative Services, page 31, 1050. Both First Selectman Gerber and Chief Operating Officer David Becker.
The two notable changes here. Number one is the $165,000 increase is related to the Paycom annual subscription, and that part of the offset of that is the head count that we just talked about in finance. This is going to be recurring. It could go up if we do additional services with Paycom. We've actually increased the service requests with them a little bit to do garnishments as well. So we added to the services that we originally contracted for. On education and memberships, that's the CCM membership that came out of the First Selectman's Office.
Are there any questions regarding administrative services? Seeing none, we're going to move on to Parking Authority. We have First Selectman Bill Gerber and Chief Operating Officer David Becker. If you didn't get it right before 4 o'clock, I did send some stuff, and I believe Mr. Becker is going to pass them out, paper copies here. But for those of you online, it is under our backup for today's meeting agenda. And it's also in an email that I did send about slightly before 4 o'clock. Just waiting for those to get passed around.
Just a little preamble.
Yep, go for it.
Okay, I just want to make the point that, part of the issue with the parking authority is they really did not do robust budgeting in the past. So there wasn't a lot to go on in terms of a template for how to budget. But what David and Tom did was, just go into Munis and pull out what they could from the actual expenses and try to roll them forward.
Did Mr. Becker, did you want to add anything, or we're just gonna?
So the only thing about the handout is I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that one adjustment on here was the 401A was originally listed specifically on the parking authority draft budget that you had seen. The Board of Finance, when making the votes and adjustments, 401A is captured directly in the in basically it's under our active employees as part of the retirement. It's grouped for the whole town. So that lives in that 7604 is actually the delta that you see here, is that amount is for 401A, and it doesn't actually live in the department budget. It lives in another budget. So it ultimately still nets out the same. It's just one adjustment in this actual final and approved by Board of Finance budget that you see here today.
Are there any questions regarding the parking authority budget?
This isn't one of them. David, can you just repeat that? I'm trying to find where that item is that you just mentioned.
So you'll notice on the second page of the 3-page budget document that was handed out, this is, you'll see it shows, it nets out to a total parking authority and has a negative 7604. That would be because if you were to have looked at the original draft of the budget, we included that retirement piece within the parking authority's budget originally on the draft copy to capture the amount. But when the votes took place at the Board of Finance to set where everything ultimately goes, the 401A money is not held at the department level. All of the 401A money, similar to pension contributions and health and whatnot, is actually grouped and covered under an entire budget within the, so that's the difference between the draft. Otherwise, this is the same as all the draft versions everyone has seen for the last month or so.
So it's the same as the draft version we saw at the end of March, with the exception of the 401.
And we did add and I would say we added a personnel summary page now to break that out. So now that it's official that from the Board of Finance.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. So was a full-time employee previously eligible for 401A under the town's plan?
So they're handled directly out of the enterprise fund, and so while they're in the payroll system and then charged to the fund, any benefits and whatnot have historically not been handled by the town. So certainly questions about that, and whether it was over all these years, similar to we've discussed that the DPW employee and things like that, and whether they've been handled correctly. There's certainly some concerns. I think what we're focused on now is making sure that when they get set up as a department and they move forward, that it's a clean slate to make sure everything's done the right way. And obviously they would receive, the full-time employees would receive 401A in that scenario.
But before that, were health benefits?
And healthcare, that's
Yeah,
another piece.
and before that, healthcare, and I think we went over this before, and now I'm remembering, so I apologize.
No, all good.
401A and
So I moved
healthcare were
pieces.
not coming from the town before.
Correct.
Right, okay, thanks.
And
as I asked the question, it came back.
Yeah, and there's
My
some
bad.
questions
Sorry.
about that, but again, like, our focus is move forward and do it right.
Thank you. Representative Zezima.
Thank you, Liz Esmond, District 4. I do have a question about the 2 employees. Was there ever a discussion about whether they could or would be included in a bargaining unit, and which one would that be?
Well, that remains to be seen, but most likely, one, the department head would not, and, possibly her number one, her full-time employee would be eligible. Yeah.
Thank you, and I appreciate this transparency. I feel like there's still things we don't know, and this is, our commitment to taxpayers. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Representative Garskoff.
Thank you, Josh Garskoff, District 5. Could you, please, Mr. Becker, please explain the last item in revenue and the last item in expenses? Parking Authority Reserve for State, can you explain what that is?
So, yes, so there is an amount that needs to be allocated into into a separate account and can immediately be redeployed out. But it's per the state lease, and we anticipate that under the new lease terms, as you remember, there's an expired lease, so we will enter into new terms. We've begun that discussion, but the state revenue that's tied specifically to the leases, the parking spaces that are on state land, they go into a reinvestment account. So you will, we will actually separate out a sub-account for that. They've actually not been doing that historically. They've used an enterprise fund. They've used a capital account as a pooled area. So what we are looking at is making sure that we separate that out. Interestingly, as soon as you separate it out, you can essentially bring it right back to reinvest into those areas. So this is that amount. So it shows a contra of what drops to each account. So we take all the revenue in, and a portion of it goes into that account. Same on the expense side. In similar fashion, it's an accounting piece that the auditor, in discussions with the auditor, in that we are actually, we are similar to this where that revenue piece is going to go back into the enterprise fund. The enterprise fund is going to actually stay alive for some revenue and some expense along with the general fund as we do it. So expense-wise, the authorized appropriations fund is that the expense side will come out of the enterprise fund. So you show it as expending all of the funds and then a contra as a expense to book where the expense side comes out of. So those are two pieces where the enterprise fund is going to see money, flowing through it, and making sure that we stay compliant for the audit piece. And Tom and I both, had some extensive conversation with the auditor on that.
Yeah, thank you. That makes perfect sense. And that's kind of what I thought it was. It's just the naming of the line items are a little hard to understand. Thank you.
Yeah, and we debated that a couple of different times on it, and, fair point.
Thank you, Representative Steele.
Thank you. Jeff Steele, District 3. David, thanks for printing that out. It's clear. Following up on Representative Garskoff's comment, I have a few just obviously budget related questions, and I'll ask as two or whatever it takes right now. That 320, can you elaborate a little more how you got that 320? I see that if you look at revenue at 1.22 and expenses at 681, you have essentially a profit of 530. After taking out the 320, you have a net profit of 208. I was just curious how you got to the 320. And I guess before you answer, my guess is that is the revenue from the state side of the parking lot as well as tenants, or how do you get to that 320 exactly? I'm just
that's correct. And we did use a formula for trying to get to that number. It is actually something that will be helpful when we end up with a new lease that spells this out a little bit more clearly. One of the things that we actually referenced was an older utilization report that the state had that a little bit hard nowadays because post COVID era things certainly have changed, and what we looked at was a weighted average of how many state versus town parking spaces there were daily, on each piece of land, and then yes, the tenants, and we came up with the 320. I think the 320 is probably a potentially a high side number, but it was a fair assessment at first pass within this. And then hopefully with the state, we'll now be able to sort of, nail down exactly how we want to calculate what moves, into that fund or account. It's really a reinvestment account, but and then make sure that we at least move the money, properly through that moving forward. So.
Okay, just as a follow-up to that, so there are 1,200 parking spots basically, and the state owns a third of them, 400. So that's why I was curious. Are you taking a third of the net profit and putting it into a fund for capital projects? I mean, it seems a little high. Great, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious how you came to that, because
So-
if the net profits is 530, a third of that would be.
Well, and actually, and to some extent, you know, it does notate it as being, you know, the surplus, the actual net number. So, you know, longer term, that, you know, that number may adjust as, you know, as the net, right? So the utilization on the expense side right now of the enterprise fund leaves more of the, more of the state, you know, reinvestment surplus, which is a good thing, that it puts more in there, and the goal is absolutely more, you know, capital expenditures and whatnot. It does net out to your point. It, you know, I think it's roughly a quarter in the end when you look at it. It isn't that isn't exactly how it is, though, because it's about 100 and, you know, essentially that whole 140 in the rental income was booked there, and in this year 100% of it to be captured. When you actually look at the parking spaces after that, it's not exactly the same. There's interestingly, there's actually several different state sections in the Fairfield area, and then there's different utilizations, and town, and there's different utilizations of some of those spaces. Some of the spaces designated as town are actually not heavily utilized, and in some places they're more heavily utilized, right? And the same goes for, so Southport as an example, we actually weighted much more, it's a much smaller portion of it, but much more of it was weighted towards the state number in here, because you know, anybody who traverses, you know, pre or post COVID through the Southport area would notice that the Trinity lot, which is considered town space as leased back, is not particularly now as heavily utilized as the state pieces. So in that instance, you would actually weight it more to the state and less to the town. So when we were looking at the Southport, we weighted more heavily in the favor of putting the money into that reinvestment piece.
So yeah, I mean, that's interesting. You're gonna do a formulaic calculation of usage in those town and state properties, and take revenue from that based on usage versus bottom line revenue, bottom line expenses. That gives you essentially a profit, and it's that has historically gone into a reinvestment fund. But you're actually going to, it sounds like you've been giving more potentially, but you're going to do it not just on a simple calculation of revenue minus expense. That money goes in, or a third of that money. You're actually going to take it further and look at specific spots used, percentage of lots, utilization, everything. I mean, that's, you know, that's going to be a lot to keep track of. But as a follow up to that,
Just, I think that was two
well, it was
questions, so
my
I think that was
my
two,
one
so let
question
me,
has been about the 320, and I'm asking a follow up on that. Is, you said that was going to go into a separate fund
Last
or
question.
not?
go ahead.
Just as part of that
So-
320, is it going to go into a separate dedicated fund for capital improvements, or does it go, where does that go?
So that is, it's a separate, it'll be a sub-account within the enterprise fund. So technically, our understanding is that it's currently being pooled. They do have the STIF account they've been utilizing for capital purposes, and then their main operating account, both of them operating as two accounts, literally physically separate accounts, but accounts within. However, our interpretation has been that they actually technically need a sub-account designated specifically as the reinvestment account or fund. And so our goal is within the main operating account of the enterprise fund to set up a sub-account and track separately this pool of funds. And again, we're going to meet with, you know, it's gonna go back and forth with the state, obviously, and get an up-to-date lease and some of these items and how that approach goes. But we do expect formulaic to be, you know, the correct path, and we want to make sure as much as possible it gets dropped to capital anyway. So more is better in that world.
I do have one more question, but
Let
I'll
me
wait.
just see if
Yep.
anyone else,
of
Representative
course.
Colburn.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Colin Colburn, District 8. Two questions. The revenue that we're seeing, if you add back in the 320, it's 112 and some change. The revenue that we have in the finance section of the main booklet on page 78 has 1.1 even. It's about $128,000 difference. I want to state what I'm understanding and just make sure that I'm getting it right. So basically, that $128,000 discrepancy between those two numbers is because we have to take about a third of the net profit and put that aside. Is that correct?
So so the finance number of 1.1 was a top line placeholder on best available information that we were able to pull out of the Munis system while setting the budget. We have spent, I would say, the better part of the last 5 or 6 weeks and actually, well, about the 2 weeks or so prior to the budget, really trying to get information from the parking authority. And for a variety of reasons, we really weren't able to obtain much until a little bit more recently. So we went off of what was in Munis and we tried to work through Munis. One of the issues within Munis is a lot of things in the way that they're coded, the way we run it as a department and run departments, object codes and whatnot, did not match up necessarily in the same way for whatever reason. So so we put the placeholder of 1.1. The draft budget had the more accurate and what you see here representative of more accurate numbers at the 1.228 number, and that went into the draft budget copies that had been circulated over the last month or so, and then that was ultimately voted in by the Board of Finance. On the Board of Finance adjustment sheet, you'll see that the 1.1 was taken out of finance. It's no longer in finance. It had been a legacy item in finance when we moved it to 1.1 because that's where the lease payment was taken, and finance is oftentimes a catch-all for items such as this. So it's now been moved to being a separate department. It gets its own revenue page and its own expense page. You are correct, though, that the 1228 and change, I think it's 1228775, is the amount of, if you were to take this 320 and back it in, you would find that. And to Representative Steele's point before, it is roughly a quarter that then drops into that fund. It happens to work out to sort of that quarter, but it was a formulaic approach that got there.
Okay, thank you. Separately, I know back in, I think it was January, when we were talking about the parking authority, the overflow parking lot at Mill Plain Road. We're not currently collecting day parking there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Anecdotal, but there is absolutely this year, it seems like we are at least Tuesday through Thursday back to what it was. I mean, I occasionally, don't judge me, anyone, but sometimes I take the 8:30 train because I have to drop my kids off. And yes, I'm at the office at 10 a.m., which is technically an hour later than I'm supposed to be. But at 8:30 a.m., at 8:30 a.m., you're almost parking in that overflow. And actually, I've noticed that there is, I see parking in the back. I assume that's town operations that's going on. But in the front, I have noticed on the way home that there actually are people parking there. So are we going to reconsider collecting day parking there?
That's a good point. I would say I drive by there a lot, but not typically in that time window. So I'm certainly gonna start to, sort of loop through there and ask some others, and maybe ask our specials to take a look at that, because if it is filled to that point and actual people utilizing it, then that becomes a different conversation. And similar to my wife that has to go to the city more often now. I feel bad for everybody that kind of go there more often, but at the same rate, as far as if we're talking parking authority, that's, it's good, and I guess it's good in a lot of ways in that we're a commuting town. So we'll definitely take a look at that, and if it is something, then we can look at adding that. I would say periodically there are some uses, things up from the rec center that overflow. I know that
There's some discussion, they'd have to use, we had agreed all the way along the backside of the fence, but that, schools may, because they're having issues, you know, they're parking up and down, the main roads, and police is, for safety reasons, trying to get, you know, vehicles off that road. So there are some of those vehicles related to that, but I would assume if they're in the front or middle, they're scurrying over to the train. So,
Thank you.
Representative Havey.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Representative Lisa Havey, District 9. My question is, did you work with the parking authority to build this budget?
So I would say, yes and no. They, they have sent some information over. We've had, you know, we've had periods of time, you know, several weeks where we were asking for data, and, you know, for a variety of reasons, our staff, you know, were not supplied with information. You know, which made it a little bit problematic. I would say that has, you know, that has turned, you know, the tide a little bit, and we're getting more information. One of our benefits here is that we you know, we have all of the data in Munis, so a lot of it's been coding it and whatnot. I certainly would have liked for that to have been a more collaborative. You know, we're hopeful, obviously, moving forward in getting the information that it will be. I will say that you know, we can, again, you know, we can see what they spent, and one of the things working with or not on this, that after this next year will probably be better in the following year. It will just be the not so much the total, but the placement of, in that, you know, we ask our departments on a, you know, a pretty relatively standardized process for what goes into what types of accounts. And certainly these items, they have not necessarily been coding the way that we would normally do that. You know, we're going to look to, you know, correct that and work with the director of, you know, and staff on how we do that moving forward.
Thank you.
Representative Estrada.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ken Astrida, District 1, and the conversation the last few minutes is why I'm not an accountant. And so you may have answered my question already, and I just didn't understand it. So I'm going to try to just to put it as simply as possible here. Just what is the net bottom line benefit to the town's budget of taking on the parking authorities? 100,000, 200,000, and what's that number?
Yeah, in the current year, it's projected to be 908,000. You know, that will change in the future, but current year.
Yeah, but what about net, like once you've taken away all the expenses?
So, well, that's, I mean, what you're asking, what drops to the bottom line in the general fund in this current year?
Exactly, yeah.
It's projected to be $908,700 is the budget amount.
Okay.
Your revenue fully drops to the bottom line.
So there's no expense taken against that then?
No, a portion is 320, goes into the enterprise fund, and then there's roughly 300 that comes out of the enterprise fund on the expense side, and you know, but that flows to the enterprise fund.
Okay.
So 908,000.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any other first questions around before we go back to Representative Steele? Looks like you're up, Representative Steele.
Thank you. Yeah, I have no argument in terms of these numbers that you presented. It's more about the preservation of money for capital projects like fire systems and paving Southport, benches, scooter racks, bicycle, just, you know, the improvements, obviously. So my question is, what is the status of the existing $525,000 STIF fund? Is that remaining in place? Or is the 320 going into that? So it would build to say 8 something. you mentioned and I think you used the term enterprise fund. I assume you're talking about the reinvestment fund or the STIF account, I guess, because I know there's a cash account and a reinvestment account. I assume that's what you're talking about, the enterprise fund being the reinvestment account?
Except we will actually have to set up a separate account. Now, it may not be a separate bank account, but it would be an account from a tracking perspective. In that, from what we can tell, that reinvestment piece is not actually the STIF account. They're using it in similar fashion, but it's it does not appear to be completely, tracked separately as the exact state net amount going into it. But to your point, essentially that reinvestment piece, it's to some degree, it's be the right word, but it's almost, it's accounting and it's compliance from accounting, but it's money flowing in that will then go back to the parking authority and it will go back to capital items. And I think that's the key here, is booked in an account or booked in a fund, booked in the STIF account or the general, which generally are, earn the same, but tracked separately, ultimately means the same thing, which is that what you bring up, which is the capital piece. We've earmarked inside this budget a $150,000 placeholder for capital. In that, the enterprise fund can be drawn on, beyond that, for the only place you would do it at this point would be, because all of your operating expenses are covered, would be for capital. If we needed to spend more and get the Southport lot paved sooner, which is things we talked about, those are the types of things that we want to get in soon and start working with staff and assessing and getting, firm numbers, timelines, and really build that schedule out and get into place. We felt that the $150,000 placeholder in year one, was a solid, we are committed to continue to expend a significant amount of money on capital projects, and moving money through the reinvestment and the size of the STIF account will only add to our ability to ensure that these capital projects are done and near term. I think
But that 525 though is slated specifically for capital projects, not for operating expenses, because that was the amount after expenses were taken from revenue in the past, and that was put into that fund. I mean, I have a statement right here, 525,000, based on the lease with the state. That is for specifically capital project, which is great. And that it would go back to the cash fund to make payments, obviously, and then back in. So there is money from the cash account that goes in and out of that capital investment account for payment of capital projects. But my question is that, will that 525 stay protected for capital projects and only be used for capital projects as the lease with the state stipulates now? What they do in the new lease obviously could change, but that money that's separate. That's for capital projects. And there's 1.4 million in the cash account, I believe, some of which would be used for obviously operating expenses through the end of fiscal year 25 and into 26. But I'm just looking out, for commuters and keeping the station maintained. That 525, that's for capital projects specifically.
So I think we're generally saying the same thing. I think we're saying it maybe a little bit differently around the edges, but our intent is to continue to heavily reinvest in capital. We understand that account, has been the capital set aside. We intend on having a significant portion of additional dollars drop into a sub account, and the way from an accounting perspective, we believe it should be tracked, and we're going to discuss that with the state and make sure that we're fully, and work with the auditor, that we're 100% in compliance on it. The one thing, when you read through the wording and the reinvestment, it is, our interpretation on that is that it does not specifically state capital and only capital, but it is but to your point and why I say I think we're generally saying the same thing, there aren't, you could talk about the general operating of and the specifics and carve out your expenses. The place you're going to put it is going to be capital. That's where your excess is going anyways. And if you look within our budget, we have a significant amount of money, earmarked specifically to go to capital. I mean, I don't know how many more times I can say the
Okay,
word
I guess, and then
capital.
I'll end after
So I
this.
think
So,
we
so
agree.
can we assume then that 525 that's in there, and if you put 320, I mean, like, am I adding that up right? That would be somewhere in the range of around 850 in these, whether there's two sub accounts, because there is an existing sort of sub account. It's that reinvestment fund. But if you create another sub account for the 320 or anything else, collectively that's around 850 or 855 dedicated for capital projects. Can I then assume that 850 will be solely used for capital projects only and not expenses, because there is money in the cash account for expenses?
I would say that that's the primary use, and that's, that there's a robust capital schedule that would essentially probably meet about that number in the target that we plan on in the next few years tackling and quickly clearing through. I would just say that, again, if you read through the current version of the lease, and it is not exclusively capital, there is the operation of. So what I don't want to do is sit here today and commit to 320, and then next year I'm at 320, and next we have a capital account, 3 years later with massive excesses of, and then we're actually charging more permits, fees, or something weird back to, because we're not actually allocating that. Technically operating some of the state pieces can be carved that way. I mean, some of this is the accounting of, but I can't say it enough times, and that we intend on increasing the amount of capital. That was one of our frustration points. We had wanted more capital to be spent. Our intent is to very quickly increase the amount of capital that is deployed out for the parking authority, and to do that over the next few years in a way that is impactful for your commuters. And I would say, obviously for all residents, because Saturday, Sunday evenings, a lot of people, still use those facilities. They don't necessarily pay. So clearly the paying community is a big piece of it. But, those are things that are noticeable. So we plan on continuing to robustly invest in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Britton hasn't asked a question yet, so he gets to jump ahead of Representative Pistilli.
Thank you. Peter Britton, District 1. All right, I need to see if I get this figured out, because I'm going around in circles here. You got $1.2 million in revenue here, and you're taking 320 out for your state, right? You're appropriating 320 as a side balance that Jeff was talking about. You have 680,000 here in expenses attributed to the parking authority. So the net balance, right, of what we're talking about in terms of quote unquote net profit is only what, 250 or what I calculate? 227? Is that fair to say?
It's moving. If you took a top line and bottom line number, then yes, year over year for operations, but it's moving through a variety of different accounts, right? So revenue goes through the general fund, expense goes through the general fund. A portion of the revenue then moves into the reinvestment fund, which we were just speaking of, and then the expense side moves back through the enterprise fund. So there's a few different places things are booked from an accounting perspective. So it's not exactly
What I'm hearing is
simple.
you're going to drop 908 to the bottom line for increased revenue.
Correct.
Which seems off to me, because if there are 680,000 of expenses, whatever way you're going to expense them, I don't know if that's.
Our CFO would like to answer that.
Yeah, basically what we're saying is
all of the operating expenses will be transferred back to the enterprise fund, where the cash in the enterprise fund will be used to fund those expenses. So they will be moved out of the general fund. So the net impact in the general fund would be the 1.2 million of revenue less the 320. So that's how you get to the 909 or 908.
Representative Ludwig-Sack.
I still feel we're overstating the income. Sorry, the revenue.
Sorry, you weren't done. I apologize. Representative Britton, did you have another question? I apologize.
I'm done.
Okay, thanks.
I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. Christine Ludwig-Zach, District 8. But just for clarification, do we have expenses and net profit or revenue categorized like this in other areas where it says revenue, but it's not actually the revenue because it's bucketed in different areas where we don't have strictly the revenue and the expense, or is it just how we're looking at it for the parking authority?
So in our self-supporting accounts, we have not identical but similar situations where you are moving, and sometimes literally there are also capital accounts, regional fire school, Fairfield County Dispatch Center, parking, WPCA. So there are a few places where you've got contras and chargebacks between different accounts. So again, not exactly the same, but not dissimilar, and
Okay.
things we work with the auditor on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. I think my question is related. I'm hoping it's not duplicative and I didn't just misunderstand. Representative Britton mentioned that he thought maybe that the top line might be misrepresented. I'm wondering if the expenses are misrepresented. Like if we have a true picture, or will we have the ability to track like how much DPW expends on the maintenance? Like I see, we have a line 54320, maintenance repair of buildings and grounds, 15,000, but I would imagine that it's actually much more. And I'm wondering if we're going to have a way to somehow quantify that better in the future, because like, plowing, picking up garbage, just general upkeep has to cost more than 15,000 in my mind. And I think there's just stuff we're not capturing yet, and we're probably just don't have the ability to, but do we plan to in the future, and how do we plan to do that?
So that partially gets to the categorization on it. Some of those types of items are under maintenance. Some of them are under fees and pros. Some were marked as capital. So that is partially, we're going to, one full year, under our belt, and also continuing to work to try to make sure that things are charged, into, they're more aligned with the way the rest of the town departments account for the items. I think that will give us a little bit better of a snapshot.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions regarding the parking authority? Seeing seeing none, thank you. And we're going to our last item of the budget hearings. We have our town clerk, Betsy Brown, page 25, 1030. Betsy's been here every single night, all the time with us. We appreciate it.
So basically the only changes in expenses are collective bargaining agreements, salary increases. There's a step increase for the assistant town clerk who just came on board last year. Social Security went down because of that. And my big increase is $500 for advertising for all the legal notices for the warning for the RTM.
Are there any comment or questions for our town clerk? Representative Havey.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And thank you, Betsy, for everything. I'm wondering if there isn't room in this budget to resume our packets. I, for one, really miss them.
No boards and commissions are physically mailing paper packets anymore. Everything's online.
I'd be happy to come pick it up.
The only thing is things change rapidly, as we know. We're getting information at the last minute.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions regarding this budget item?
The Board of Finance does it statutorily.
Any other questions? Okay, we're gonna wrap this up. Our actual budget voting meeting is May 5th. Sorry, no Cinco de Mayo celebrations for any of us. That's per charter, so don't blame any of us for that. If you have any questions at all regarding the budget in between now and then, please forward them to me at your earliest inquiry so that we can get you the proper answers for that. Any other questions or concerns regarding the budget? Representative Georgiadis. Gotta put it in.
Just regarding our upcoming meetings, so the 21st is committee, 28th of April is the RTM meeting, and then May 5th is the budget vote.
That is correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.